Alright, good morning everybody, it's Miss Melding here, talking you through step 4 of our decimals work, understanding thousandths. Let's have a look at the introduction activity then. So here we have some fractions and some decimals, and the instruction says sort the decimals and fractions from smallest to largest. So just have a little look, have a little think for 10 seconds. How would you approach this one? Okay, well hopefully you've said about converting the two fractions that we have here, the 500ths and the 7/10ths, into decimals. So when we're looking at decimals, obviously it's all about place value. So I have my ones column, a decimal point, and then this column to the right hand side of the decimal point is tenths. Then we have hundredths, and then we have thousandths. Okay, so we need that really. We need our place value columns and the holders to help us when it comes to making fractions into decimals. So if we have a look at 500ths, obviously we have our hundredths column. We have 0 ones, the decimal point, we have 0 tenths, and we have 500ths. Okay, so 500ths as a decimal looks like 0.05. Then when we look at 7/10ths, we have 0 in our ones column, the decimal point, and then our tenths column, we know that we've got 7 of those. We don't need to do anything else after because we have no hundredths, no thousandths. So 7/10ths as a decimal is 0.7. Now that we've done that, we can hopefully think about the smallest to largest decimals that we have. So when we get to the decimal point, whatever's to the right hand side of the decimal point, the further right you go, the smaller the number is. Okay, so for example, we've got 0.1 and we've got 0.01. So what we have here in 0.1 is 1/10. But if we look at 0.01, do we have any tenths? No. When we look across at 0.001, do we have any tenths? Nope. Do we have any hundredths? Nope. But we have a thousandth. Okay. When we look here, we have 1/10. If we look at 0.7, we have 7/10. And if we look at 0.05, we have 0 tenths, but 500ths. Okay, so the smallest decimal is actually 0.001. 0.001. I'm just going to draw a number 1 actually, that would be easier. That would be our smallest. So the next smallest, we have to have a look. Do we have any more in the thousandths? No. So let's move to the next column, the hundredths. In 0.7, we have 0 hundredths but 7/10ths. 0.1, we have 1/10 and 0 hundredths. So that would look like that. Let's just make that look like that. And 0.01, 0.05. So the next smallest would be one of these two, 0.01 or 0.05. Well, it would be 0.01 because in that decimal I only have 1/100th, whereas in this decimal I have 500ths. So this one is the next smallest, 500ths. Moving on, I've got these two left. Oops. 0.7 and 0.1. So which one is the smallest, which one is the largest? We'll have a look in that tenths column, which has the smaller digit, 0.1. So that becomes our next smallest, or the second from largest. And finally, 7/10 is our largest fraction there, because as a decimal it's 0.7. Okay, you're going to see some activities that look like this, and it says circle the numbers which have 6/1000ths. So again, think about your place value columns. So we've got our ones, the decimal point, to the right of the decimal point we have our tenths, then we have our hundredths, then we have our thousandths. So thousandths are actually 3 decimal places along. 1, 2, 3. So when we are looking to see whether a number has 6/1000ths, we need to count 3 decimal places from the right of the decimal point. So 1, 2, 3. This one has 6/1000ths. This 6 here in this number, does that represent 6/1000ths? No, it represents 6/10ths. So that one isn't an option. We have 2 6s here. We have a 6 there in that column and a 6 there in that column. The first 6 is in the tenths column. The second 6 is in the hundredths column. So no 6 in the tenths. Sorry, in the thousandths column there. This one, we can clearly see we don't have any 6s, and so we cannot have 6/1000ths in that number there. In this number 0.196, we have a digit of 6, and yes, it is in the thousandths column. So this one will need circling as well. And then finally we have 0.606. 2 6s here. The first 6 is in the tenths column. The second 6 is in the thousandths column. So yes, this number also has 6 in the thousandths column. So just to reiterate, circle the numbers which have 6/1000ths. This one, because the digit 6 is in the thousandths column, and this one here. True or false? 5/10ths equals 500,000ths. So in order to answer a question like this, we need to actually write down what it's asking us. So 5/10ths is the same as 500,000ths. Well, if we do our place value, we've got no ones, decimal point, 5/10ths. I don't know why it's doing that with that line, apologies. Excuse me. So there we have 5/10ths. But let's see whether that looks like 500,000ths as well. So what we need to do is we need to do the 5/10ths again, but this time put some placeholders. I have no idea why it's doing that with my numbers. Put placeholders up to the thousandths column. So here we have our tenths column, our hundredths column, and our thousandths column there. And what we then need to do is just have a little look. Does it look like 500,000ths? Yes, it does. So 5/10ths is actually the same as 500,000ths. Let's have a look at another activity. Match the decimal numbers to their equivalent fractions. So here we can see that each of these fractions is out of 1,000, which means that when we're converting them into decimals, we're going to need our thousandths column. So we have our ones, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. And let's have a look at the first fraction. I'm not going to look at the decimals because that might confuse me. I'm going to look at my fractions first. And if I've got 470 thousandths, then I write it like this: 0.470. Because when we read that back, we say 470 thousandths. So 470 thousandths is the same as 0.470. 0.47. Let's have a look at the next one. 47 thousandths would be no ones, 0 tenths, and 47 thousandths. Okay, so 47 thousandths is the same as 0.047. And so finally, 407 thousandths is the same as 0.407. So what I'm trying to say to you is it's all about your place value and knowledge of your place value. If you know that the thousandths column is the third along after the decimal point, then you can try and figure out where the other digits would go. 470 thousandths, 47 thousandths. Don't forget to put placeholders in your tenths column should you need to. And finally, just to confirm that a bit more, you have to write the fractions below as decimals. So we have 93 thousandths. So think about your place value headings again. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. We're not going to start with writing 93 here, because this digit 3, actually ends up in a different column, and we haven't looked at that. So we're not going to write 93 like that. What we are going to do is we're going to make sure the digit 3 ends up in our thousandths column. So you could even do it, excuse me while my pen doesn't work, the opposite way round. So you can start with the 3 of the 93 thousandths and put that in the thousandths column. And then your 9 would have to go in the hundredths column. From there, you don't have anything to put into the tenths column. You then have your decimal point, and you then need to put a 0 as a placeholder in your ones column. So 93 thousandths as a decimal is 0.093. So let's have a look at this next one using that same method then, working backwards, because you may find it a little easier. So there's my tenths, my hundredths, my thousandths column. This time I've got 930 thousandths. So this 0 here needs to be in the thousandths column. So the 0 go in the thousandths column. That means that the 3 would go in the hundredths column and the 9 in the tenths column. We have our decimal point, and then we have our placeholder in the ones column. So 930 thousandths as a decimal is 0.930. So you're going to get activities that look like that on your sheet today. Please just think about your place value. Have a little paper and a pencil with you if you need to do some jottings, and then just give it a good go. And if you're still not sure, work backwards like I've just shown you how to in these two examples here. And it's all about place value. So have a go, have a think, and then do your very best. Thank you.